President Trump had a very, very close relationship with the Crown Prince and was actually widely seen as giving him a pass for Khashoggi's death. You're right, there was a 9/11 terror attacks, and there was also the oil embargo in '73, so there have been a lot of challenges.
And now that Trump, who, as you say, was so close to the royal family, has left, what approach is the Biden administration taking?
Well, the Biden administration said it's going to be tough, but at the same time, it seems intent on maintaining the relationship, even as it deals with the issues now. Administration officials said they let the Saudis know before it announced it was canceling some arms sales recently. So they're trying to be reasonable about what they're telling them.
Where are the drafters?
And as you mentioned, Biden has now called King Salman. The White House says they discussed ties between the two countries, regional security, human rights. But the statement did not mention anything about the report on Khashoggi's killing that so many people are waiting for.
NPR's Jackie Northam covering this story for us. Thank you, Jackie.
It's like the longest
Thanks
draft
so much,
table in a while.
Support for NPR comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Maybe everyone's
Across
playing
the
ranked
country,
because ranked is
coal-burning
near
power
the end of the
plants
season.
are
Everyone's trying to get their
closing.
rank up.
Wind turbines and solar farms are expanding. This transition cleans the air, it reduces greenhouse emissions, but it can also be painful. In North Dakota, some local officials are trying to keep a coal plant alive by blocking construction of new wind power. NPR's Dan Charles has more.
Last year, Great River Energy, an electric cooperative in Minnesota, announced it was selling Coal Creek Power Station in central North Dakota. CEO David Sagu said if no buyer showed up, they'd shut the plant down in 2022.
Clean Fear's okay.
This has been a heartbreaking decision for our
Do
organization.
you like Arcanist?
If the plant closes, the coal
Lightning
mine
good
next
with
to
two
it will too.
colors.
1,000 jobs will disappear. But Sagu told North Dakota's coal miners in this video
immediately stands
that
out
Coal
as like, you
Creek
must take this
couldn't
card.
compete with cheaper electricity from plants burning gas.
We lost $170 million in
Fear's
2019
fine.
on energy
I
sales.
do love playing
Closing
Giants.
the plant would cut those losses. It would also open up a new possibility. Beth Sohold could see.
I don't want to
She
start
was
on
director
Greenback,
of the
even though
Clean
it's a good
Grid
card.
Alliance based in Minnesota.
I think we realized there was an opportunity right away.
It was an opportunity to tap North Dakota's wind energy. The wind is strong here and reliable, a powerful alternative to fossil
It's kind of
fuels.
just like what I
if
want
only
to
there
do.
was a way to get that power to the places
Power
that
level
want
is not like
It's no secret that one of the barriers to development
trade to
is a lack of
force. Well, I'll try to
transmission
start with
capacity
Giants.
to move
It's not
the
forcing,
wind or
but
solar produced electricity from where it's produced to where it needs to be used.
This is where Coal Creek Station comes in.
There's a lot of upside to
huge
this guy.
transmission line running from the heart of North
Just play
Dakota
blue-eyed.
all the way to Minneapolis.
squash.
Closing the plant would free
Both
up that
Americans.
power line. And Great River Energy wanted to build huge wind farms
The cars are
around the
both really
station
good.
to take advantage of it.
Well, this is
That's when Ladd
really
Erickson
good.
stepped in.
It is
He's
good to be
the
February.
attorney for McLean County, North Dakota, where the coal plant is
Barrier's
located.
gone.
The
Still
transmission
snow,
line is
Snow
everything.
Island, but I'm
It's
gonna
the
take
golden
squash.
goose.
Erickson and other political leaders in North Dakota
Try to
want to
get
keep
into that
Coal Creek
Giants life.
Station open. It's a pillar of the local economy, providing more local jobs than wind turbines will. They're looking for somebody willing to buy the plant and keep it running. And in the meantime, they don't want wind companies claiming that transmission line.
Looking for
Oh, the
Mistwalkers.
transmission
That's the
line.
three
There's no value in the
3 mana
plant.
1/4 flyer.
Last year, two
Shapeshifter.
counties around the plant took steps to
Looking
keep wind companies from
for
getting access to the transmission line. One of
more
them adopted
bolts.
restrictions
Looking for
on
the
power lines
uncommon.
from new wind farms. Another one passed a 2-year moratorium on any new wind projects. And it worked. Great River Energy dropped its plans for wind farms in North Dakota. It
Let's see how
also
long
provoked
I can stay in
opposition
this archetype. I might
at
have
this
to bail
meeting,
out.
for
It's like
instance, of the
kind of
Mercer
forced
County
it.
Commissioners last July.
My name is Gary Scheid,
there's some
and
Giants.
I'm a
This is the
retired
Giants.
farmer.
He was hoping to rent some of his
This
land to
thing,
wind
I
turbines.
just have no idea.
I
Never played it.
cussed at
Don't plan on playing it.
frickin' wind for
Prospect can
50
be good.
years up north.
I think the Craven Hall
This
to go with the
is an
squash.
opportunity to maybe
I
cash
like-
in a little bit on
Frostbite's
that
a little low power if you don't
wind.
have Snowland.
And he was shocked that the county would stand in the way.
Could take the Snowland.
Others,
but-
though, like Anna Novak, who's married to a miner, urged the
Could
county
be,
to keep
could
up
take
the
the
fight
Snowland
to
early.
save
You can
coal
usually
power.
get
People are
a
scared
couple
that
Craven
they're going to
Halls,
lose their
but
jobs,
it's just
and
send
that
signals.
Hazen and Beulah will become ghost towns.
A lot of the landowners who
Berkshire's
would
a nice
profit from
giant.
wind
Now I really
power
want to get these
don't even
snow-covered
live here, she
lines.
says. State
little
officials say
unfortunate
they're
that I'm
talking to
passing
several
them, but-
companies that are interested in buying the coal plant and might keep it running, burning
That's a
coal.
Berkshire.
Others are skeptical. Coal Creek is losing so much money, they say.
Need
It's
instants
hard to
and
see how that coal
sorceries.
plant would suddenly make money for someone
It's
else.
snowlands now.
And in the meantime, the local
I forgot
blockade
about
on
this
wind
guy.
development around Coal Creek
Maybe
Station
I should take
remains.
snowlands a little earlier.
Dan Charles, NPR
This
News.
card's not great, but I mean, it's great to draw a
Biden
card,
administration
basically.
wants to put democracy at the core of its foreign policy. The coup
playable.
in Myanmar a few weeks ago is an early test, and the administration has slapped sanctions
Good for
on
me
the
that
coup
it's still in the
leaders.
back, which means
Washington also wants other countries to follow its lead.
China might be open.
Japan has some real influence in Myanmar, and NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports this puts Japan in a tough spot.
Again, I would have moved out if I hadn't been seeing good giant cards.
Civil society activist and
But
former
so far, there's
Buddhist
been at
monk.
least.
He spent
I should look at what else was in the
Myanmar's
back with this
jungles,
card. There's probably
organizing
it would
ethnic
have been a better
insurgents
hedge
to
if
negotiate
that's there.
ceasefires with the military.
I think this
He's a
invasion
colorful
is that good.
example of how Japanese officials and NGOs work within the system in
Take a look at
Myanmar
this
to
website.
diffuse
What else could I
conflicts,
take
win
from that pack?
friends,
There
and
was
gain
a
influence. Emoto says
3-2
Japan
flyer
should
in
use
white.
its leverage to nudge Myanmar back
There's
towards
snow,
democracy.
green, white land.
He says sanctions should be used
Couple
only
black
as a
cards.
last resort.
今、経済制裁としてですね、彼らとのチャンネルが切れてしまうと話す
If Japan gets involved in imposing
Just
sanctions,
take
we
the
could
snow
lose the channels of
forest here. I guess the
communication that
part
we
there almost
have.
good with
What we should do now
Arcanus.
is to mediate between the Burmese military and the Americans and Europeans.
That appears to be happening already. Japanese media report that Ichiro Murayama, Japan's
snow
ambassador
forest.
to Myanmar, has been in contact
Try-
with the
try to get
country's
some snow
military
action
chief
going on.
and coup leader, General Min Aung Hlaing.
I really want to play any of these cards. Could play it,
Last
bind
week,
them.
Murayama
Yeah, it's
told
so bad in
protesters
Giants.
outside
Giants
the
really
embassy
want like direct
that
damage
Japan
and
would not
instants.
ignore their voices. He called for the military to release de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi from
Maybe if I end up
detention and
splashing,
resolve problems
I want
democratically.
this Horizon
Japan
Seeker of some
maintained
sort.
friendly ties with the ruling junta during decades when it was isolated and sanctioned by Western nations. And they stayed in touch with Suu Kyi. In fact, Burma's army was founded in 1941 by Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San, with help from Imperial Japan, both of whom wanted to oust Burma's British colonial rulers.
The importance of Myanmar for Japan is partially historical, but more due to this geopolitical
This is a giant.
devastation between Japan and China.
Maiko Ichihara is a
kind of
visiting
shift
scholar
gears
at
a
the
little
Carnegie
bit.
Endowment for International Peace.
Yeah, I don't.
She notes that Japan's influence in Myanmar has grown over the past decade of semi-civilian
It's kind
government,
of a weak card anyway.
which the
I mean,
military
weak pack
tolerated
anyway.
partly
Not
in
really
order
missing
to
much
decrease
there.
its dependence on China. Japan is the biggest donor of development aid to Myanmar among the developed economies. But Ichihara points to one argument
Okay,
about
some
why
good cards in
Japan
this
has
pack. There's a
proceeded
Raven,
cautiously.
Frostbite.
If Japan was to
Reinforcements is
try
fine.
to further push the country
Probably
toward
take the Raven.
democratization, then there could be a backlash from the military.
That backlash has now happened, and
You kinda
Tokyo
go
faces a dilemma.
any
It can claim
combination
the
of these
moral
three
high
colors
ground
right
and
now.
sanction the military, but then it risks losing influence, both in general and relative to
Just trying to
China.
think how good Frostbite would
Derek
be.
Mitchell is president of the National
don't have any
Democratic
payouts for it
Institute
yet.
and U.S. ambassador to Myanmar from 2012 to 2016. He says there's an intense debate going on in Tokyo about
See a
what to
ton
do.
of snow, but
Japan sort of does what it
could
normally
still end
does,
up in some snow.
protect its business interests and sort of cast
It's what
aside
the
the issues of
Berkshire that I really
values
would
of
like to know.
democracy. Then the military will essentially wait this out, and they'll say, "Well, this is the West," or they won't feel the heat.
That would undermine Japan's own claims to be practicing values-based diplomacy. And
It will come at the expense of the Biden administration's confidence that its doctrine of leaning on allies to join it in this global values competition, that those allies will truly
Not
be
seeing any
there.
signals that I
Yet
should
that
move
Japan doesn't
all
have to
in on
join the
Giants.
U.S. in
I mean, there was
imposing
this one
sanctions
card,
yet.
but this is really
It just needs
replaceable.
to make Myanmar's military believe that it could. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
Israel is giving the world a glimpse
Raven
of what
form.
life might be like as the pandemic lessens. It has vaccinated a higher portion of
I
its
wanted to
citizens
part the
than any
realm,
other
I
country.
think.
About a third have had
Or
both
Hagi mod.
doses. And this week, Israel started opening new doors to people who've
Play
had their
Yeti if I
shots.
end up more snow.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reports that includes
play
places like
Runashore.
gyms and the theater.
Many
Alright, well,
businesses in Israel still
what do we
aren't
got
ready to
here?
open, but it's opening night at the
This
first
is
Israeli
great.
indoor theater to put on a play after months of lockdown.
Mm,
Adam
yep.
Henkin,
It's
an
like
usher
glimpse
at
to me.
Jerusalem's Khan Theater,
giant- kind of a
checks
giant
tickets
payout,
and
giants and
something called
shapeshifters.
a green pass.
Yeah, just
I
checking
need
their
a
green
blue white land.
passport is called to check that they've been vaccinated.
I have enough snow yet.
or,
That guy's
they
good.
were sick and then got better.
This card's fine too. I mean, it can
Israelis
become a
1 week after
giant if
their
you have
second
giants
shot
already.
or
but
recovered from the virus
I
can
think
print out a
glimpses is a big
government-issued
here.
green pass with their ID number and a QR code. This is all very new. The usher doesn't have a scanner, so he holds up the pass and asks the mostly senior-aged theatergoers to recite their ID numbers by heart to make sure no one's cheating.
Kraken, you gotta be really heavy snow for that.
To make sure that they're not
You
breaking
must
someone
know.
else's.
Oh, Mistwalker or Island.
If you don't have a green pass, you can't see the show.
That's close. I
Tirza
already have
Plaskinski and
Bergstrider.
Orit Kamir come early.
Frost Yeti
We
and
feel as
Paul.
pioneers. I mean, it
This work
doesn't
is
matter
so
what
good,
they're
though.
performing, we'd come because it's been way too long.
Okay, and you
since
take
we
the
were
land, otherwise
Do you
they
feel
won't wheel.
safer knowing that everyone in the
I'm
audience
definitely gonna
would
miss
be
the
with a green
Mist
pass?
Walker,
That's
but
essential. Yeah, it would have been worrisome if we had to sit in a closed theater with lots of people breathing at us. If
I
we
would like
didn't
to
know
get
they
this
both got
Bergstrider
both
stuff going.
vaccines. We've been waiting
I
for
care that
people
much
to
about
take
Pilgrim Rock,
responsibility and
but-
do that.
Not
Oh, here's the
everyone has.
mountain.
Vaccinations are available to all Israeli adults, but 40% of those in their 20s haven't done
I
it.
prefer some
Some
version
think
of
they're
the
healthy and
duels
don't need
in
it.
these colors.
Others have heard false rumors of bad side effects.
I'll take
But the promise
basic.
of a green pass is a popular incentive. You can't get into a hotel, theater, or gym without one. At a vaccination center in the city of Petah Tikva, Adi Shir nervously waits in line.
The only reason that I'm going to get this vaccine is because I want to go to the gym.
So it works. The pressure works.
Yes, the pressure works.
We stop by a nearby gym and watch a young man still not fully vaccinated get turned back at the entrance, while 50-year-old Ophir Aniel finishes his first weight routine in a year.
I feel safe for now.
Well,
I
that's
don't
the
know
only
what
thing
will
I'm
be
definitely
in
not playing. So, I
2
mean,
years.
we've got playables.
I
Here's
want
a
to leave
duel.
now.
Okay.
Next door, there are hardly any vaccines for Palestinians in the West
Duel's
Bank
fine,
and
but
Gaza.
definitely want
In
the
Israel,
duel.
the issue is that some Israelis refuse to get vaccinated.
part that are on wheel
One
last
lawyer
time. I would like to
representing
get two of
vaccine
them if I'm going to
refusers
play it just to go
says
with the
some
Arcanist.
employers threaten to fire them or put them on unpaid leave
This last one
until
wheeled, so
they
I
agree
feel
to
like
get
I've got to get at
vaccinated.
least one more.
There was a similar dilemma at the theater. Director
Blood
Udi Ben
Economic
Moshe
Squash.
says his stage manager and some actors didn't want to get vaccinated.
Could
so
play
he
two Avon
pleaded.
Form,
For
although I
us.
don't really want to
Do
play
it
two
for
Avon
us.
Form.
We want to work.
I would
We
love you
want
another
to
glimpse, obviously.
Come back and work, please. Do
Uncommon,
it for
though.
us.
And he says they agreed. Now, an hour before curtain, the director
Alright.
is worrying about something else.
Well,
I'm scared.
not a ton here. This is technically a giant.
The audience first with that funny mask on the face.
3 giants
Do they see
and
me
1
in theater?
shapeshifter and 2
It
wizards
still
so
works. It's
far.
magic.
He had nothing to worry about.
pretty weak
The audience
card.
laughed through their masks. The play is Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit, translated into Hebrew. A light comedy, just what the audience needed.
I think this guy's better.
Daniel Estrin, NPR News,
This is a giant,
Jerusalem.
but
When David A. Thomas first became president of Morehouse
took it
College,
3
the
jobs
historically
before, but
black
for a
men's
gigantic
college in
fatty.
Atlanta, he started to notice something right away.
It's
I've
okay.
been to a number of alumni events, and
Play this
it
thing.
almost never failed that someone would pull me aside and say, "Is there some way I can finish my degree?"
Take the
I feel
land.
this amazing connection to
Alright,
Morehouse.
seize the spoils.
Did so much for me, but
Why
for
am I
one
playing- wait, why
reason
am I
or
playing green?
another, they never actually got their degree.
More than 2
just
million black
realized
men in
there's no
America are
reasons
in this
I'm playing green
situation,
right
according
now.
to the Census Bureau. They started college but never earned
It has
a
not been
degree.
open. Okay,
So
let's just abandon
Morehouse
green. Yeah,
developed
that was
a
a good-
plan to help
good
some of
spot.
them reach the finish line. An online degree program with reduced
Maybe I'll
tuition
play
for
this
men who already have some
dual
college
land
credits.
just for this note.
President Thomas joined me to talk about why he
I haven't
thinks
seen
this
any,
new
any
initiative
good
is
green
so
cards
important.
being passed.
We know that having a college
Choose a
degree
creature type.
versus having
I chose giants.
only a high school diploma,
Highly,
there's a $1
highly
million
unlikely I would play this card.
difference in lifetime earnings on average.
Flying
We
giants.
also know, quite frankly,
Double
that for
bounce.
black men to get opportunities,
Playing any of these cards.
their credentials matter
Play this guy.
more than the credentials
Look at
that
the
a
white
white
cards,
male
so-
has to present. So a white male might get a break if they've got lots of
Invasion of
experience, but they
Giants,
don't have
I
a college degree.
guess.
I know
I
from
don't
30
know,
years
but I
of
wanna play
researching
two
the
of those.
influence of race on careers
Oh,
that blacks don't get that same
I have
benefit
to
of the
play this.
doubt.
I'll play it.
So tell us about how you overlay this challenge that you are trying to address with this program onto the issue of the student debt crisis, which is also a drag on people's ability to thrive today.
Well, one, this will allow students to get through with their college degrees in a shorter period of time. Also, one of the reasons we know
see
that
any green in that
individuals
bag.
don't finish college in their early years, you know, the usual 18
Didn't
to
get that second
23
part there on.
period, is that they run into financial difficulties. They then find themselves in stable employment, but need avenues to complete their degrees. So the affordability challenges become less over time if you find stable employment. And lastly, we think we've set tuition at an affordable level, and students can set their own time clock for how quickly they finish.
Am I right that credits are going to cost about half what they would for an in-person Morehouse education?
That's right. Credits will cost about $600, and our on-campus tuition is about
I don't think I'm going to get paid off this draft for Plain Giants.
How many students do you hope to serve through this
Green
program?
was definitely not over
Originally, we were thinking that over the course of the next 5 years, we would serve
I only
1,000.
put 3 picks into it.
I actually think we will serve at least twice that. And here's why.
I don't know why.
When we announced on February 2nd that we were going to be launching this program in August, within 24 hours, we had 2,000
Could use some
inquiries.
sideboard.
Within 72 hours, we had over 5,000 inquiries.
Wow.
That's more applicants than we got last year to our on-campus flagship program.
For that guy.
I've gotten several letters
I have one mid that I may not even play.
individuals
I don't want to play these guys.
who
Basically
would have
just Bert Schrader.
graduated
Yeah, no way. I'm
in a
playing that.
Morehouse class in the
Taking on a
1960s
Raven.
who never finished, who are
There's a nice
signing
tunnel
up
here.
to come to the program
I don't
because
need-
at a personal level,
I don't need more.
they want to complete
Snow.
themselves.
President David A. Thomas of Morehouse College, thank you for speaking with us about this new
Is
program.
now time to pick
It's
up
been
one
my
top
pleasure,
end
Ari.
giant, or should I go for the frostbite? I'm thinking
You
a
can
top
think
end.
of the coronavirus pandemic right now as a race. On one side, the mutating virus. New worrisome strains
Second-
keep popping up
second
here in the US
frostbite.
and
This
around
guy's
the
a
world.
giant.
Some of those strains might eventually threaten the effectiveness of vaccines.
I do want
On the other
doubles
side
just for this
are
guy,
the
so let's
humans,
go and
public
take
health
that.
workers racing to get shots into people before the virus gets into people. Scientists trying to figure out how to make sure
I need
that
a few
vaccines
more good
can
creatures.
protect
I don't really
against
want to
those
play
new
these
variants.
Yetis.
So there is news on both sides of the race this
Wish
week.
I had that
And
3-1
with me now to
changeling.
talk through it
Remember
are
I took
NPR
over it?
science correspondents Joe Palca and Rob Stein. Welcome to you
I took
both.
the Snow Island.
Hey, Mary Louise. Hey there.
3 mana 1/4 changeling.
Rob, I'm going to let you kick us off. The news this week has focused on new strains in California
Love
and
another
in
squash.
New York. And of course, that adds to what we've been hearing for weeks about variants first seen in the UK, in South Africa, elsewhere. What is going on here?
There's Snow Island.
Yeah, so there's a couple things going on. First of all, scientists are starting to sequence the genetic code of the virus more, and the more they look,
Maybe I
the
should
more
try
they're
to
spotting
get
variants
2
that have
strategic
mutated.
bindings.
Second of all, the more a virus spreads, the more chances it has to mutate. And the virus is still spreading so much, especially in this country, that it has lots of chances to evolve new mutations that could make it more of a threat. But, viruses mutate all the time. Just because they mutate doesn't mean they're necessarily more dangerous.
creatures.
Sometimes mutations make the virus more
Two of them
dangerous,
can be
but
unlockable.
most of the time they don't. The key is to figure out
Definitely
which
don't need
ones
another
to
one of those
worry
guys.
about.
I guess I'll take the second to part their own.
Exactly. So help us there. Which ones should we be
I have
most
2 of those for the Arcanist.
Yeah, so many numbers and names of variants coming out these days. It's hard to keep track, but there are 3 that scientists are still
there's still a
mostly
chance-
worried about the most in this country. The first one was
Double
spotted
green.
for the first time in the UK, and it's more contagious. There's also some evidence that it may make people sicker.
there's still a chance they
and
play
there's,
2 strategic
and there's
bindings,
another
but-
that was first seen in South Africa that looks like it also
not.
spreads faster. And it appears more
Should've
capable
been
of
white blue.
evading the immune system, meaning some
In
drugs don't work
retrospect.
against it, people could get reinfected, and vaccines may not be as effective against it.
Wanna be
Ditto another one
serious?
that was first spotted in Brazil. But
I
more
have a lot of
recently,
instance. I guess this guy
homegrown
can help
variants
that
that have been
instance.
spotted in the U.S. that have raised some red flags. One is spreading fast in California. It looks like it's probably more contagious too, but probably not quite as contagious as the others. Another one was just spotted in New York City. It may
Good play,
be
this
more of a
guy.
worry than the California variant because it has the same immune
Yes,
system evading
yeah,
mutation as the variants from South Africa and Brazil. It looks like it's spreading fast too, but it's still unclear whether it's more contagious or not. I talked about this with Christian Anderson at the
Thank you,
Scripps
Lance
Research
Rose.
Institute.
We need to keep an
Bit
eye on
heavy,
it, but
but-
we of course have variants already in this country that will
don't
become
think I'm playing
dominant within the
green,
next
so
just the next few weeks here
Take
in,
this
in the United
lumberman
States.
out.
Just the next few weeks. Rob, what does that mean for the effort to try to contain the pandemic here?
Yeah, so the big concern
I
is
want
they
doubles of
could trigger
those.
another surge. You know, the U.S. looks like it may finally have turned the corner on this terrible
I
pandemic.
think I do have
But if
enough
one of those
snowman for
variants
that.
takes off, the virus could come roaring back again.
Or snow.
And researchers are keeping a close eye on Florida
Only
and
two of these
California because
guys.
that's where the UK variant's been spotted the most.
Hotel. I
And
don't
so it could be
need
the
Raven
first place
form.
another surge starts.
One way to
And
deal with
so, like you
artifacts
said
and
at the
enchantments,
beginning,
though.
we're in this race to vaccinate as many people as possible to try to head something like that off.
Okay,
conservative
Joe
site burn.
Palca, hop in and join us here. I want you to get us up to speed on the vaccines that are out, that are currently being rolled out. There's 50 million doses as of today, I was seeing, according to the White House. And the concern has been, are they going to work against these other variants? Can they be modified? How hard would that be? What do we know?
Well, modifying them is not
Three
the big,
giants. Sorry, I don't need these
It's not
individual
all that
giants.
difficult now. This is a new generation of vaccines. They were created from DNA sequence, which is picking the virus out, sequencing
this
it,
deck
and then
kinda
creating
sucks.
a vaccine. They did that in 6 weeks. So the whole time frame has been collapsed enormously. It can be done fairly quickly. What we're not really sure yet, or what scientists aren't really sure yet about, is how effective these vaccines will be against these new viruses, because they just haven't had a chance to study them that much.
What about this news that Pfizer and Moderna are considering coming up with a booster shot? So you would get not just one, not two, but 3 doses of the current vaccines. How would that help?
Yeah, well, the idea is that all of the vaccines seem to show some activity, at least in the lab, against the all the vaccines against the virus. And if you can boost this activity, make it stronger, then even though it's not as effective, it will be effective enough, and it might prevent serious disease and death.
Rob, beyond vaccines, what else do we have in the toolkit?
Yeah, you know, one really important thing that should be being done is to ramp up sequencing.
These are the only two
you know,
cards
big
I'm really
time,
looking at.
you know, to
Frost
really
Yeti
know
and
how
Raven
common these
form.
variants are, how fast they're really spreading, and to spot any new ones that evolve really quickly. The CDC is
I think
rushing
we're
to do
taking
that,
out
but
this
the
other
country
invasion
still
of the
isn't doing
giants.
nearly enough. But the most important thing to do
I'm
is
gonna
to
play one
slow the
Raven
spread
form.
of the virus, to minimize the chances
that.
that more contagious variants will
Oh, I
really
didn't like
take
it land.
off
Let's
or
see.
mutate into something even more dangerous.
fine.
So it's crucial not
8,
to
8,
relax, to
8,
keep
4,
wearing those
swipe. Oh, just
masks,
'cause the Highland
keep our
Forest.
distancing from other people. You know, some states have started
Yeah, that's
loosening
fine.
restrictions, which is really worrying public health experts.
Well, I ended up with
And
2
Joe
run
Palca,
shores.
final word to you. How long would it take for these new vaccines to be approved?
Well, they're not going to need the same, tens
And
of
I can't
thousands
get a
of
second
people
one
to
with
study.
the
It's
Arcanist.
probably a matter of weeks or months as opposed to many months. So we'll see.
All right, that is NPR's Joe Palca and Rob Stein. Thanks to you both.
You bet.
Women and people of color are often the targets of harassment and abuse online, and that drives some to simply abandon platforms like Twitter and Facebook. Now, a software engineer is using her own experience of harassment to build tools that help people feel safer on social media. NPR Tech correspondent Shannon Bond has more.
There's a saying in Silicon Valley, solve your own problems. And Tracy Chow sees plenty of problems in her social media feeds.
Everything from the casual mansplaining reply guys to really targeted persistent harassment and stalking and explicit threats that have led me to have to go to the police and file
behold.
reports. Like, I've experienced a pretty wide range of
Keep
this
any land,
harassment.
any hand with 2
Chow
land
is a
and behold.
Stanford-educated software engineer who's
tap
worked
land.
at tech companies like Pinterest and Quora. Along the way, she's become a leading advocate
Cool,
for
this guy.
diversity,
Can play
pushing
instance with it,
Silicon
so-
Valley companies to disclose how
Yeah, I can
many,
block that thing.
really how few, women engineers they hire. And
Hopefully
that's
they
made her
won't blow
a
it up.
big target of online harassment and even threats of
And fight-
violence
you
from
can't-
Twitter
you can
to
fight with 2
Facebook
mana,
to
but you could
Reddit.
have like a
I am
bolt or something.
so devoted to solving this problem because it is a
Demon Bolt,
personal one. It's a
specifically, I
pain
guess,
that I
is the only
live
thing we
with
really have here.
literally every day.
Chow's diversity work has also given her an inside understanding of why this kind of abuse is so persistent on social media. As she sees it, it's because the men, mainly white men, who founded, run, and invest in
Should
most big
I-
tech companies are less likely to experience harassment.
tell anything?
So they've failed to anticipate
think
how these
so.
products could be misused.
They didn't prioritize safety solutions because they never needed them for themselves.
And that's why Chow has
I guess I
created
should
an app
foretell the
called
behold.
Block Party.
If I have to
The
cast a
idea is to
part,
give people more control over their experience on social media. You connect Block Party to your Twitter
Trying to show
account,
this card
and
does.
it
I
gives you
believe
a
it.
set
I
of
don't know if it-
filters that you
Going
can
to
use to
Fortale card man
decide what
or
messages
cast
you
instant
want to
sorcery.
see and what you don't.
So in some ways, it functions a bit like a spam folder. We don't pretend that it doesn't
So I want to
exist.
cast this.
It still
So like I could just
exists
left up
there,
4 mana, that would have
but
been
you can
fine.
choose
But
when to look at
if
it.
I have to
And that
use the party, if he does a
choice
fight
is
spell here, I pass
Most
the
social
part.
networks do provide tools
Okay.
to block,
It's not a
mute,
fight
or
spell.
report other users. Block Party makes that easier to do on users' own terms. Right now, it only works
Raven
with Twitter,
Fawn
but
can kill
Chow's
the
ambition
giant.
is to expand Block Party across social media. It's also designed to help deal with the
Snufflebird
worst
Mountain
abuse
is good with the
by
Berg
letting people
Strider.
collect evidence of threats or stalking.
Guess those
That
cards
kind of
are fine.
documentation is really important for legal cases, like getting restraining orders, says Carrie
There's the
Goldberg, a
Arcanist.
lawyer who represents people targeted by
duplicates of-
online
I think I have
abuse.
duplicates of
Any
this.
feature that collects the evidence and puts it somewhere, I am all for. Especially if
what
it
do I wanna
means
do
that
here?
a victim has control over when he or she looks
I don't
at
wanna
it.
play the
But Goldberg
Arcanist yet.
says she's also
I wanna
frustrated
play the
that
Depart
Block
this
Party
turn and then
needs
Arcanist
to
next turn.
exist in the first place.
So
She
let's
says the tech
do
platforms should be on the hook for keeping their
Raven
users
Fawn,
safe.
We shouldn't have to be
Fortale.
farming that out to third-party companies and putting the onus on the victim to have the software, figure out how to use it, because it still is based on this
Planning on
premise
using
that
Depart this
the
turn.
abuse is
And
inevitable.
then the giant
There's
next
also the
turn.
concern that a tool like this could exacerbate another problem of social media, the filter bubble, where people shut themselves off from views they disagree with. Chow says the idea of Block Party is not to filter out alternative perspectives, but to give users a break from the kind of toxic behavior that can
Only
turn
reason I'm
them
doing
off
that is 'cause I
social
have this
media
guy.
entirely.
The people who
Wow.
often are disproportionately targeted for harassment are people that we really need to hear from. It's often women,
Let's squash that at
minorities,
some
people
point,
from
but-
marginalized backgrounds. These are the people who are being silenced, and that has pretty big consequences for all of our society.
She says the biggest risk would be losing their voices from the
Now I
online
can use
conversation.
Runashore.
Shannon Bond, NPR News.
I didn't go. I guess I just want to get Berg Strider done, actually.
Federal pandemic relief is sometimes compared to a bridge to help struggling families and businesses get to the other side of the crisis. Now, as Congress weighs adding new planks to that bridge, some are questioning how wide the chasm really
Maybe
is.
didn't
The
need
House
to get
is
that one
expected to
damage.
vote tomorrow on President Biden's $1.9 trillion rescue package. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on one of the more contentious elements in that plan.
I can bounce
President
both these
Biden's rescue
guys.
package includes nearly $350
Then I can use this to
billion
get the-
dollars
to get
to help
that other one
governors and
does.
mayors fill the holes
Just keep
the
bouncing these
pandemic has left
creatures.
in their budgets. But after meeting with Biden earlier this month, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson said, "No thanks. It's too high. It needs to be lowered." Hutchinson, a Republican and
I do
vice
have
chair of the National
one-
Governors Association, says his state has
I don't
already
have any
patched
discarded
its
land, so
pandemic
I'll just
budget
play it.
gap
Oh, no, I had
and
one
doesn't
Raider.
need as much additional help as Biden's plan is offering.
We lowered our budget
Oh, wait, no.
5% because of the
Yeah, but it's
pandemic,
like
and we have recovered from that because we kept our businesses operating. Our economy is moving, we're creating
Let's give it
jobs,
the end of
and we have
turn.
a surplus right now.
Nationwide, the pandemic's toll on state tax collections has been a lot smaller than many people feared last spring. J.P. Morgan says by the end of 2020, state tax revenues were down only about 1/10 of
Sure, why I'm doing
1%
this,
from what
if I
they
have to be
had
honest.
been before the pandemic.
On
guess
average,
I'm gonna leave up
state
the
revenue
staple
has
stroke.
mostly recovered.
what I'm
And the
thinking
key
here.
reason for that is that income has mostly recovered.
Mark Goldwine of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says that's especially true for upper income workers who've generally managed to keep working and who pay the lion's share of state taxes. Goldwine admits, though, there's a lot of variation around the country, and it doesn't break neatly along party lines. Tourism and oil prices both took a beating during the pandemic, so states that rely heavily on those industries suffered a much bigger blow.
States
Not
like
sure about that
Nevada
play. I
and
didn't really
Hawaii
use my
and
mana very
Alaska and
effectively.
Texas are not doing very well. States like California have a $25 billion surplus. Idaho has had the fastest revenue growth it's seen in years. So there really are big differences between the states.
While state revenues on balance have fared better than many people expected, though, that's only part of the story. State and local governments are also facing unexpected expenses, including tens of billions of dollars in added costs for Medicaid. Michael Leachman of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities
fine,
says
man.
some
Okay,
states are also
I'm completely
providing
fine with him
direct
killing that
assistance
1-3.
to struggling families and businesses.
Many families are having trouble getting food on the table. More than a
So
third
just
of
bounce both his creatures this
adults who are
turn.
renting are having trouble paying the rent. that adds up to costs to states and localities to help those people and businesses make it through and get back on their feet.
Republican Mayor Jeff Williams of Arlington, Texas, says his city is spending $400,000 a week to support local vaccination efforts, even as it's preparing for a likely drop in property taxes.
Many cities rely on property tax revenue. We haven't even experienced that yet because the appraisals are going on right now, and many of our commercial businesses, the values have really gone down. So we are bracing for another 10%
Just
hit.
see if he has any fight
and then
or
we
anything.
don't know.
City and state governments have already cut about 1.3 million jobs in the last year.
Target ton,
About
on
half
top
those
of his
jobs are
owner's
in local
library. That's the
education,
big one.
some of which could be restored as schools reopen. But Leachman says state and local government layoffs are still almost twice as high as they were during the last recession.
After the last recession, we made a big mistake. Federal government provided some aid to states and localities, but it was far too little, and
Now I
it
play the
ended
second
much
Arcanist.
too soon.
Leachman says that's one reason it took so long to recover from
Get
the
the other
last
one of those
recession.
things back.
Biden, who was vice president at the time, doesn't want to make that mistake again. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Key, a bank dedicated to providing guidance in unpredictable markets. Helpful information about economic conditions impacting your business available at key.com/economic conditions.
We're going to talk now about what the UN refers to as the shadow pandemic. 1 in 3 women have experienced intimate partner violence in their lifetimes, and experts say domestic abuse has been growing under the stress and confinement of
I'm
the
going to play
pandemic.
this land because I
Lee
want
Goodmark is
to
director of the Gender Violence Clinic at the University of Maryland. Welcome to All Things Considered.
have Thank you so much for disdainful having me. stroke up.
So a report in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine last year said stay-at-home orders may create a worst-case
So
scenario
best just
for
doesn't gain
individuals
2 life.
suffering from domestic violence. Can you explain what makes this such a toxic combination of factors right now?
There are so many of the correlates of intimate partner
Megan bounce
violence
2
that are
creatures,
kind of
so-
caught up in the COVID pandemic. So obviously isolation, not being around other people who might be able to provide you with support or intervention, economic stress, which is absolutely correlated with
Got
the
him.
perpetration of intimate partner violence. The trauma.
Mediocre
that many of us are
Giants. All right, what did he
experiencing
play
both
here? Let's
Because
see.
of the sickness and death of our family members, or because of various
It's
other
got some
things that are
aggro.
going on in our lives.
Yeah, he's pretty
All
aggro,
of those
looks
things
like.
can come
He
together
didn't play very
to
much,
create
to
a
be
scenario
honest.
where
He played,
intimate
like,
partner
4
violence is much more
spells.
likely and much more difficult to address.
And so
Okay,
how has that
so
translated to what
anything I
you've
can do
actually
for
seen
early
over the
game, I
last year
could
of
put
this
in a
pandemic?
1-3.
There's a fair amount of anecdotal evidence that suggests that
Could put in
rates
a
of intimate partner
3-3.
violence are going up. I don't think we know anything for sure yet. Certainly, we can't look at court dockets, for example, as a way of monitoring what's happening because
take
many
out,
courts are
like,
closed. But I think when
a
the reports come out for
Runashore?
2020, we're likely to see a
not
significant
much
increase
would
in
change, to
reporting
be
of
honest.
intimate partner violence.
You mentioned the courts, and I know that you have researched the legal system's ability
Could
to
put in the
address
slumber
these
man.
problems. Even apart from the pandemic, I understand you
Double
conclude that
green
the
now.
legal system falls short. Explain that.
I do think the legal
And they
system
have
falls
one
short
of
in a
these
number of
things.
different ways, and you have to be clear about
Yeah, just run it
both
back.
the criminal legal system and the civil legal system, which are different
Don't have much of a
pathways for
sideboard
people to try
with
to
the
seek
stick.
some kind of protection. The orders that come out of these courts are often ineffective. They're not always enforced by police as strongly as they could be. Prosecution and conviction, there's not any
Behold, like to
real
see
evidence
that.
to show that those actions prevent further recidivist violence unless
More
you
land.
closely
Didn't
monitor
wanna see
somebody
that.
upon their release. And there's no reason to believe that incarceration does that work either. And in fact, incarceration actually has the effect of spurring some of the things that we've talked about, like economic distress and like the experience
did
of
not need to
trauma,
draw more-
which
more
then
land.
actually exacerbate rather than lessen the chances that intimate partner violence will recur.
You're saying locking up the perpetrator might not be the best solution? What would be?
There are a variety of other things that we could be doing.
guess
One,
I'm
of
not that
course,
worried
is
about the
looking
tokens,
at
'cause
the
I can
economics
bounce
of
them.
intimate partner violence. Congress could be looking at increasing the minimum wage right now. And there's evidence
Well, I mean,
to
like, what else
suggest that
am I gonna do
increasing the
here?
minimum wage would reduce all crime, including, one would think, intimate partner
don't need the
violence.
green
Other
mana,
things,
don't need the
putting more
1-3.
funding into community-based services are things that are actually happening as a result of the pandemic. So you hear a lot about, for example, mutual aid and pod mapping and trying to figure out who in your community can you really rely
discard a
on
card?
when you
Oops.
can't rely on the state.
I should have done
That
that
all
after-
came out
after,
of the domestic violence movement, the movement to end childhood sexual abuse.
On his
so
turn, I
those
guess.
concepts have been around for a long time.
Sounds like you're saying the pain and suffering of this pandemic might also have led to a sort of breakthrough that will allow for some of the long-term changes that might not have happened otherwise?
I absolutely hope that that's true. If anything good can come out of this pandemic, one good thing could be our ability to see the real power that communities could bring to this issue and the ability of communities to step in and provide protection when state structures aren't doing what we hope that they would do.
That's Professor Lee Goodmark, director of the Gender Violence Clinic at the University of Maryland. Her latest book is Decriminalizing.
I forgot
Domestic
if any
Violence.
dwarf attacks, you get the treasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
And
That was
if you or
insane.
someone you know is
Especially
experiencing
since
domestic
these men are
abuse, the
screwed.
National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233.
Virginia is poised to become the 16th state to legalize recreational marijuana. As lawmakers there finalize the legislation, they're trying to learn the lessons of states that have come before them, lessons on licensing, criminal justice, and social equity. Democrats say they are focused on undoing the harm
Not playing
marijuana
this game
prohibition has
particularly well.
caused to people of color. Whitney Evans and Ben Pavier with member station VPM in Richmond have been covering the process. They're both with us now. Hey there,
At least he
Whitney.
can
Hey, Ben.
equip and
Hey.
use
Hi.
the buzz.
Hi, Ben. I'm going to let you kick us off.
Sells
We
a
said
man is screwed.
lawmakers are finalizing the legislation. Where
Letting
does
him
it
get
actually
that
stand?
treasure was really bad.
Virginia's House and Senate have both passed their own versions of marijuana legalization, but they're trying to reach a compromise this week on key differences between the two. There's a lot of moving
I'll be
parts
Lutz's
here,
last
including when
island away.
selling and buying and possession could all begin, and much of that will be hashed
Wow.
out in the next 24 hours.
Run
All
amok?
right. To this point that we said is a focus for Democrats, making sure recreational marijuana is legalized with equity in mind. Whitney, what exactly does that mean?
All right, you
Well,
got
over
me.
the last year, we've seen Democrats in Virginia focus on addressing the legacies of racism, and that's in large part due to calls for criminal justice reform during Black Lives Matter protests. It's also driven by Governor Ralph Northam. It's his last year in office,
See,
and
how do I
he's
advance
really
my
trying to
board?
restore
With
his
this guy, I guess?
reputation. And if you'll remember, reporters found a racist photo in his yearbook 2 years ago. Here he is in his speech last month.
One of the early leaders of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency was clear that marijuana laws should be written explicitly to target people of color. And so they
Okay,
were.
This time I don't have to do anything.
So we've seen how that's played out in Virginia. Black Virginians have, they've been 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana crimes for most of the last decade. At the same time, several national studies have shown that they don't
Only
use it
one red,
any more often than
unfortunately.
white people. Northam and other Democrats
'Cause they
say
can always use to
Virginia
part
can
their
address
own.
those disparities by learning from other states. And part of that is also learning how to set up the business side of things.
The business
I'm gonna
side
kill
of
this
things. I know
before it
you've been
attacks. I
digging
don't
in
want
on
it to
that, Ben.
boast.
What is Virginia learning on the business side of things from other states?
Well,
guy's
racial
mad now.
disparities were not a focus for the states that legalized early on. And so wealth in the industry flowed to mostly white entrepreneurs and investors. One 2017 survey found that over 80% of marijuana business owners
Still
and
always gonna
founders
fight?
are white. So some states have tried to address the issue in different ways.
That's not
In,
gonna work
in
out
New
well for
Jersey,
him.
they're directing 70% of tax revenues to go toward communities impacted by the war on drugs, which compared to 30% in Virginia. In Illinois, they've tried to set up a special category of so-called social
But he
equity
knew I had that in my
licenses.
hand.
But so far, the
Oh, I
state
could just
doesn't
cast a
have a
staple
single majority black-owned dispensary.
So many-
Akili Parnell is
so
a
many
civil
things that I
rights
could've done
attorney
differently
based in
there.
Chicago. He says that in Illinois and other states, medical marijuana dispensaries run by large companies have gotten a big head start. And he says people often compare the process to a marathon.
At the same time, if you and I are running a marathon and you start 5 hours ahead of me, you're going to win that race every single time. It doesn't matter what else we do.
The big companies argue there's enough room in the market for everyone, including smaller social equity applicants.
Let's stay there for a second. What is that exactly, a social equity applicant?
Well, states are defining this in different ways. Everyone agrees it's a really tough thing to get right. Illinois' system ended up giving a big preference to veterans, for
Do you have
example.
any way to loot left
In
in
Virginia,
my
there are
deck?
plans to include people like Mike Thomas. He's a black hemp cultivator in Richmond who served some months in jail for marijuana possession as a teenager.
I just feel like me and people like me deserve to be in this business. You know, I've risked my life for the plant, basically. I've done time for the plant.
Lawmakers can't specifically use race-based criteria, but they can give preference to people who serve time for marijuana offenses, who
I'm not gonna
graduated from
counter that,
historically
but
black colleges and
do it anyway.
universities, or who live in communities that have been impacted by the
Nice.
war on drugs. And Virginia's
Like
plan
that.
calls for those applicants to be prioritized for licenses.
What about the criminal justice side of this? What is Virginia doing for people who have been punished for having a drug that is about to be legal, it sounds like? Whitney.
Both the House and Senate bills have a framework for throwing
Somebody's
out
gonna quit
previous
this thing.
marijuana-related offenses. And this has happened to some degree in other states that have legalized. Right now, the
chill, I
plans
guess.
differ on when those records should be expunged and whether they should go away automatically or if people should have to go to court and ask a judge to toss them
So
out.
much removal.
Most experts agree that automating the expungement
Speaking of
process
removal.
helps the largest number of people get a clean slate, but it's also expensive and requires a major technology overhaul in Virginia. The alternative, a petition-based process, ends up being more expensive and time-consuming for individuals.
And just another interesting
Speaking
issue
of
here is that
removal,
just 6 months
I think I'm
ago,
pretty much
Virginia
out, though.
reduced the penalty for marijuana possession to a
I mean, I have it in front of
$25
my head.
citation. An analysis we did
Okay, I
at
can't
BPM
block.
showed that black people are still 4 times more likely to get cited for possession than white people.
Yeah, and this is a sort of real-time example of why it's been so important for the state to focus
Can't
on
block.
these racial equity issues. Another enforcement issue that advocates are worried about is
Didn't play
that
well,
both bills
but I
would
think I
create a
got this
new
one.
open container law for possessing marijuana in a vehicle. They say this tool will be used to keep targeting black people. And they say it's already illegal to drive under the influence of marijuana, so why
He's
create
dead on
this new
board. Won't do
punishment?
anything.
Chelsea Higgs Wise is a local activist here in Richmond, and she heads up the organization Marijuana Justice.
We say, how in the world is this a legalization bill? The majority of police interactions that Virginians have come from traffic stops.
If-
So this is deadly.
if he
this
left
is
that back, he
dangerous,
could've
and this
blocked.
is
Oh, he didn't have
still
mana.
criminalizing driving
Something.
while black.
All
Yeah,
right,
you
the
don't
voice
have
of
mana.
one activist there in Richmond, ending our reporting from Virginia,
I
Whitney
would've
Evans and Ben
bounced it anyway,
Pavier
but-
of VPM. Thanks so much.
He didn't know
Thank
that.
you.
A new study from the CDC finds when people work out in gyms, physical distancing is not enough to stop the spread of the coronavirus. NPR's Allison Aubrey reports on what people can do to lower the risks and what factors may be out of our control.
When people
Even a bad giant
exercise and
stick is
start
so
to become
good.
winded, this increased exertion can send respiratory particles flying into the air with more force. And this spells trouble if the person is infected with coronavirus, says Dr. William Miller,
first.
an epidemiologist at The Ohio State University.
Not
Got
only does
some
it
nuts
travel
and
further,
bolts.
but it can also hang in the air a little bit longer. And as a result, that
I don't
leads
even
to
want it. Oh, yeah,
exposure
I'm gonna
of
have to use
more
my
people.
bolts.
This appears to be what happened last summer in Chicago. Public health officials identified a
This guy is
cluster of
mulliganing up here.
55 COVID cases among people who attended high-intensity exercise classes at a Chicago gym during the month of August. Though physical distancing measures were
gonna be able
in
to
place
disable stroke
and
thing
masks
anytime
were
soon.
required upon entry, people were allowed to take them off during
All
their
right, there's
workouts.
my first
Richard
proactive
Duran
button.
is an epidemic intelligence service officer with the CDC assigned to the Chicago Department of
Little
Public
more
Health.
land.
I think what this report does show is that physical
It's not land.
distancing in and of itself is not sufficient to prevent COVID transmission.
If people had worn masks,
Actually,
it's likely some
this could be
cases would have
something
been
I
prevented.
could
and there was
disable
another
stroke.
factor too. Turns out about 40% of the people in the Chicago gym cluster had attended an exercise
do I wanna
class
bolt
on the
that?
day of or the day after they began feeling symptoms.
No.
They likely didn't know at the time
God
they
damn it.
had COVID, but Turan says it's best to err on the side of caution.
If you are experiencing COVID-like symptoms, it's important to just skip that
Uh,
class and stay home just in case
Guess I
you are
bolted.
infected.
Turan says because exercise is so beneficial, people should not be discouraged. But given the virus is still circulating and only about 13% of the population has
This guy
been
can't block it out
vaccinated,
anyway, so.
people need to remain vigilant. Allison Aubrey, NPR
Sure.
News.
Bolt that too, I guess.
Stunning news today in the world of elite gymnastics. One of the sport's most prominent coaches, who had ties to the notorious sports doctor Larry Nassar,
OMFG.
has killed himself.
I'll draw that
John Getter
eventually.
took his own life just hours after he was charged with 24 crimes, including
3
human
colors.
trafficking and sexual assault. Gettert led the U.S. women's gymnastics team to a gold medal at the 2012 Summer Olympics. Joining us now is
Damn
NPR
it.
sports correspondent
My one
Tom
for one.
Goldman. Hey there, Tom.
Not looking so good at the moment.
What else do we know?
On land.
Well, we have confirmed that John
Oh,
Geddert
man.
killed himself hours after he was charged. He
Didn't
was
play it.
supposed to turn himself in this afternoon. He'd been investigated for the last 3 years. His investigation grew out of the Larry Nassar trial. Nassar, of course, was convicted of sexually abusing many, many female athletes, including some of the most famous
attack
U.S.
into that?
Olympic women gymnasts. And throughout his investigation, Geddert steadfastly maintained his innocence.
So you can get a land out of
He
it,
wasn't
maybe?
aware of what Nassar was doing.
Well, what else do we know about these?
Alternative,
There
I
were 2
can
dozen
leave up
charges that the
painful
state of
stroke.
Michigan
Ugh.
announced today. What exactly was Geddert accused of having
Massive
done?
attack.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel announced, yes, the 24 charges, and 20 of the
There we
24
go.
counts were for human trafficking and forced labor. And Attorney General Nessel explained the human trafficking charges in a press conference today.
It is alleged that John Geddert used force, fraud, and coercion against the young athletes that
Wait,
came
what?
to him
No.
for gymnastics
Oh my
training
God, that's
for
not
financial
the way I wanted
benefit
to tap
to
that.
him.
Fuck.
The victims suffer from disordered eating, including
Secret auto
bulimia
tapper.
and anorexia, suicide
Oh.
attempts and self-harm,
That was the 3-2.
physical conditioning,
Did I go really weird animation?
repeatedly being forced to
From here to here.
perform even when injured, extreme emotional abuse, and physical abuse, including sexual assault.
Now, Mary Louise, Attorney General Nessel
like
acknowledged
maybe
that
have the
cases like
sample
this
check up
don't
anytime
often
soon.
involve human trafficking. She said, we think of it predominantly as affecting people without the means to protect themselves from this type of crime. But she said it can obviously affect all types of people, in this case, young, elite female athletes. And she said the alleged victims
Kill
still
nothing.
carry the scars of those crimes to this day.
Yeah. I said there were ties between Geddert and Larry Nassar. What were the ties?
Yeah, well, Geddert was a longtime owner and coach at a gym near Lansing, Michigan, and it was there where hundreds of women say Larry Nassar abused them. Nassar was the team physician and in-house medical expert at Geddert's gym for about 20 years. One of the charges today was that Geddert lied to police about Nassar's role as
I
the
didn't need to kill
physician
that. He didn't
at
have
his
anything on
gym.
full 12,
Geddert
but he had
allegedly
flying
told
anyway,
police
so.
he had never heard any complaints about Nassar's treatment of athletes, although at least one prominent athlete contradicts that. She said she was with a group of fellow gymnasts and Geddert, and she mentioned
Just
that
don't-
Nassar had
I'm drawing
abused
any
her. She
cards.
says her teammates gasped and Geddert didn't react. USA Gymnastics
Yeah, that's a
suspended
double kill, I guess.
Geddert during the Nassar scandal, and Geddert retired in 2018. And finally, today, following his
Yeah, I
death
don't
by
wanna squash
suicide,
this thing, but
Rachel
looks like I'm gonna have to.
Denhollander, the first to publicly accuse Nassar of sexual abuse, tweeted this: "So much pain and grief for everyone. To the survivors, you have been heard and believed, and we stand with you. Thank you for telling the truth."
NPR's Tom Goldman reporting there. Thank you, Tom.
You're
Because I
welcome.
shouldn't have used it. All that removal earlier
The
on.
Biden
'cause I had this
administration is under
land.
a lot of pressure to
Oh, well.
increase COVID-19 vaccine supplies. Today, Vice President Harris held an event at a Washington, D.C. grocery store with an eye to the
New
next
crown.
challenge, getting vaccines into arms. NPR White House correspondent
action,
Tamara
that's
Keith
fine.
reports.
Like many grocery stores, this giant in Southeast D.C. has a pharmacy nestled in the corner. And the pharmacy, which is giving out COVID vaccines, is now more popular than ever.
We have people lining up all day wanting the vaccine.
Pharmacist Samir Belisle served as a guide for Vice
Like, I
President
can still
Harris's
counter
visit.
with this guy,
the easy
so
part, right?
just leave him untapped.
We don't have enough to get the people who want it.
That's
Start
the
paying
case
off some
all
of
over
these
the
one
country
ones.
for now. But already the
Can also
Biden
blow up on ones with my
administration is
land.
preparing for a time when people are going to need to be persuaded to roll up their sleeves and get their shots.
With foretell, it
Harris
could be to
has
deal
been
5 damage to a
particularly
tap
focused
creature.
on this challenge in communities of color, where people have been disproportionately
gonna
affected by
blow
the
it
coronavirus
up.
and also tend to be more hesitant about the
That's the reason I
vaccine.
wouldn't do
There
this.
have been many theories about populations that are experiencing vaccine hesitancy
more
for
rounds.
legitimate reasons that are based on historical experiences that we should never forget.
But she
Guess I
argued
could've
there
left
are
them on top
access
just so they got
issues,
mailed.
too.
Oh, well.
Vaccines need to be available in convenient and trusted locations.
Same thing as
And
last time. I'm
Belisle
gonna leave
added
this guy back so I
may
can
just
counter with
not
him.
know what to expect, especially after the second dose.
They just don't know.
The only
right?
thing I care
And for the
about.
most part, I think We all kind of don't know, right?
It was then time for
Can't counter that.
69-year-old Brenda Thompson to get her second dose, while the vice president and a trailing press corps watched.
It's kind of weird to do it in front of all these cameras, isn't it? Yes. I know, I felt the same way.
Well, I didn't pay attention to how he scribed and not like really do anything about it.
I would, but you know.
I'll just play 4-4 again and leave up mana.
Harris shared a
For
bit of her
counter.
own experience, one that is similar to what many people describe after
was-
their
oh,
second
sure.
shot.
Okay.
She went to work the day after, and then about midday,
Take
it
that.
hit her.
The first day that I
Tap
got
your-
the shot, I felt fine.
tap your gold vein
The
pick.
next day, I realized I needed to take it a little slow. And then the day after, it was like
It's
nothing
good enough
ever
to counter, I
happened, but
guess.
I knew I was vaccinated.
The shot went in Thompson's arm, cheers broke out, and her thoughts turned to what she's been missing.
I get to go see my great grandson.
Maybe I should have used
Soon,
Raven form on
Thompson
that.
will get to see her great-grandson
Save the counter for
again.
like a removal
Tamara
spell.
Keith,
I'm a bird
NPR
share.
News.
Not sure.
After 21 years behind bars, the Louisiana rapper McKinley Mac Phipps got news this week that may lead to his early release from prison. He was a rising
don't
star
need to
in
foretell this, but
2000
whatever.
when he was convicted of manslaughter.
It's
Phipps
not in my
has
hand.
always
You
said
can't make
he's
me discard it or
innocent.
something.
On
It's
Monday,
like
the state
black
of
us and
Louisiana
discard
recommended
spells.
clemency for Mac Phipps. His case now goes to the governor. NPR Music's Sydney Madden and Rodney Carmichael have done a lot of reporting on this case for their NPR
I'd blow up my
podcast,
bird
Louder Than a
shredder,
Riot,
I'd bounce
and
it in
for our show.
response.
And they're with us once again. Good to have you both back.
Thanks, Ari.
Hey, thanks, Ari.
Start by reminding us who Mac Phipps
Can't
is.
do anything about that.
Well, growing up in New Orleans, Mac was
He's at
basically
6.
a local hip hop prodigy.
Haven't really been paying attention
Then
to life
in
tolls this game.
1996, he signed with one of the biggest rap labels of the 90s, which was Master P's No Limit Records. But just about 4 years later, Mac ended up being arrested after a shooting that took place at a nightclub he was performing at just outside of New Orleans.
Right, but there were a couple key factors that we investigated throughout the course of our reporting
Whoa, he
that
takes
proved
4 damage
how
for that.
unlikely it was that Mac was actually
Okay.
the one who pulled the trigger that night. First,
Go ahead and
there
bounce
was
that
no
guy.
physical evidence linking him to the shooting. And someone else confessed to the crime, but that confession got disregarded by the prosecution.
For people who haven't listened to the podcast, you spend a lot of time talking about how Mac's music led to his conviction.
It's important to note that Mac had no criminal record before any of this. And even in his early days of
didn't
music,
foretell
Mac
that guy
described
either,
himself
but I
as
did
more of a
did it
conscious
anyway.
rapper, someone who raps about social
Nice. It's
activism
like his
and
winning game
sociopolitical
somehow.
issues. But when he signed to
Oh, it's still
No Limit
sideboarding? Okay.
Records, he
What
kind
do
of
you play
adopted a
here?
more gangster rap persona, and he earned the nickname
Can't tell
Camouflage
what his main
Assassin.
color is.
And
Black
the prosecution
and
built majority of their
white,
case on
splashing blue,
demonizing Mac's
maybe?
persona. And they even used his own lyrics against him.
Can't really tell.
And yeah, on Louder Than a Riot, we asked Master P
Don't really have much of a
Simon
sideboard.
about how the prosecution basically
Don't need a
used Mac's
1/3 ground
persona against
creature.
him.
Like
Don't
this
need
guy
Raven
should
wings, I
be
don't think.
incarcerated. I mean, when you talk about
No,
assassin, you're
don't
talking
really have
about
a sideboard.
verbal assassin. We're talking about how he killed people with his lyrics. And I think the system mixed that up with what he is as an
It's
entertainer.
fine.
So tell
I
us
can
about this
get
clemency
apart-
hearing more than
get another
20
part with
years
this thing.
after he was locked up.
This is a wizard
Yeah,
for
this
this guy.
hearing was really emotional. It happened over Zoom, of course, but his mom, his dad, and his wife were all in attendance.
Don't have any green cards.
You know,
It's
Mac
just in
kept
here
a
for
really
snow.
super clean record during his entire sentence. Even the assistant DA who was present, representing the victim's family, called Mac a model
More snow.
offender.
So now that he has this clemency recommendation, it goes to the desk of Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards. And we reached out to the governor's office, and they told us they review these cases every few weeks. So the timetable's still up in the air. But if Edwards signs it, Mac is released immediately, but he'll still spend the next 10 years of his life on parole.
There's slow
So to be
hand.
clear,
They're
this
gonna be
would not
bouncing
be an
cards for a long
exoneration.
time.
What has he said about what he plans to do if he's released? Is he going to go back into music?
Well, that definitely came up in the clemency hearing, and actually one of the pardon board members asked Mac that question,
Nice.
you know, specifically if he's planning to return
Can't
to
play this
hip-hop.
right. I can only
That
foretell or
business
play a
that you're in,
sorcery.
Has a flair for
I'm definitely foretelling this guy.
getting people into trouble, or at least getting them put under suspicion. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. I agree.
You hear
could
that
foretell
coded
another
language,
spell.
Ari?
Yeah, flair for getting people into trouble.
Exactly.
I guess
Just
if I
like we've
foretell
been investigating this
this-
whole series, it's about the criminalization of hip hop, which you hear so plainly right there. And Mac, he kind of deflects in his answer. In his response, you can hear him trying to distance
More likely
himself
to play
from the
this before
spotlight that was
this.
used against him all that time ago.
No,
I think
free
at 43
cards.
years old, my approach to, that business is pretty different.
Free
I think
cards.
I've gotten real too old to be the out front man at this point.
And as Mac says, he's different, and also hip-hop is different. The hip-hop landscape has changed so much since he first went away.
Yeah, and even though Mac's not the
Guess I
first
need to
rapper
use
to
this
come
on
home from
the
prison,
watcher next turn.
with a career to revive, most artists of his
Could do
generation,
it
they've
this
had
turn,
like
there's really
20
no
years
reason
to
to.
build a career, whereas Mac, his career's basically been on ice that entire time.
So for now, even aside from the
Mono
music,
Fortel, that
Mac's
deck
number
over
one
here.
priority is clearly his freedom.
That's Sydney Madden and Rodney Carmichael of NPR Music. Their podcast on hip hop and incarceration is called Louder Than a Riot, and they're dropping a new bonus episode soon that goes into more details of Mac's clemency. Thank you both for your reporting.
Thank you so much, Ari.
Thanks for having us.
Can bounce one of these. I guess I want to play the bounce anyway, so I can get the other one in my deck with the. Well, kind of want to get the Renishaw back. Not sure. Yeah, I think I want to save up for Renishaw now. So what does that mean? I'm attacking with both. Raven form this thing. Attack with both. Not sure about this play. Some questionable plays being made here. I'm definitely bouncing. Definitely bouncing the Vega. Top of its owner's library, sure. Guess I'll put the Doomsday Oracle back in his hand. It'd be nice to bounce the token because it kills it, but I'm more worried about tying up his mana right now. This isn't going to work out that well for me in the long run. He gets to play that bird again, and then he gets to foretell whatever he's got foretell into a card. But I mean, what option do I have? Okay, coming for life gain. Interesting. Well, the 2/5 ground creature is good against that stuff. Okay, bird's fine. Start looting away some lands. Okay, so drawing a lot of cards. Jesus. It's gonna be hard to beat this value train he's got going on here. I don't have a lot of removal. I guess I have plenty of burn in my deck. I should be able to burn that too at some point. Yeah, I'm drawing like my Frostbites, my Squash, my Demon Bolt. Yeah, so there's still cards in my deck that can deal with it. But he's got a full grip. And I got not much. He's gaining a lot of life every turn too. 4 life if he plays 2 creatures. Raider. Sure, I'll play that first. Alright, there's the squash. One, two, three, 4, 5 mana. Yeah, definitely gotta kill that thing. Back to the slow grind. At least to get rid of his card advantage. Now I just gotta get rid of the cards that he actually drew already. Life total, not gonna get through that anytime soon. But Magic's not really an aggro deck. Got the Hawk, I can filter out any lands I draw. Got Run Ashore in case anything like terrible happens. Although it's hard to leave up 6 mana as like a safety net. Okay, that doesn't do anything. In fact, it just mills him. Well, I guess it mills both of us. Oh, that's a lot of mill. It's a lot of life, and these things both have lifelink. He's ahead of me on mill right now by 1 card. Pretty close. But if I start looting, that'll change. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can loot, and I can still cast Run Ashore. Nice. Reverse to have a Frostbite there. It's gonna be a slow grind of a game here. Oh my god, more grind. Sure. Both that, but it can't stop him from getting at least 1 card off of it. Again, at least he's decking himself faster than I'm decking him. Or than I'm decking. I should build this thing now, I guess. I'm coming. It's a lot of milling going on here. A lot of milling. Whoa! There's a lot of tutus. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can bounce 2 of them. X. Obviously, you did not play around that card. Okay, well, I can't attack. He's at 21, so. If he has any pump, I die here. I was on a pump spell at least. Ooh. I'm dead on board. If I tap my... Man, if this thing was in play, that would have been amazing. If I could just still have 1 more turn, I could have blown up all those zombies. I guess I can block, and then I can loot mid-combat and try to get an instant. Let's see, what can I draw? I can draw Depart the Realm, Frostbite. Those are the only two I can draw. If I loot now... I'll play the Frostfire just in case I live somehow. Actually, if I draw a bolt, I'd rather kill the bird. I think I do it this way. And then just pray that I draw one of my 2 bolts. Well, actually, there's a bounce spell I could draw also. So I guess, I don't know. If it's bounce, I'd rather kill that, I guess. Damn. Not bounce. Not a bounce or bolt. I had 2 instants I could have drawn there, I think. I think I had 1 bounce spell and 1 bolt. Alright, well, what did I lose to here? Can't counter that. Just a bunch of small creatures, really. And 1 Kennel Master. Again, don't have a sideboard, so... I can't really go aggro and try to like punish him. The 1/3 wouldn't be terrible against... he's got a bunch of 3/2s. Yeah, I don't really have anything to sideboard. Destroy target equipment by standing on a creature. I don't think there was any equipment. Oh, there was 1 equipment. There's a gold vein pick. But there's not anything. I guess if I stole his Vega while I had stuff foretold, I could draw a card off of it. It's a little bit of a reach. Can't target artifact or enchantment spell. It doesn't do anything. Maybe just play another Frostpeak Yeti. No, he's got so much life gain. I might be able to race him. Could draw some extra cards with this. If I put in like 1 white source, I could maybe draw that. If I put in 1 plains or something. Do I have any other way to fix mana? Not really. No. Yeah, just really don't have a sideboard. Really cannot sideboard anything. I mean, I don't want to get run over. So I guess I play first. Ugh. I mean, this Frostfire is amazing against him. I don't think I can keep this. God, going down, mulliganing though on the draw though is so bad. Can't mulligan on the draw, it's just too hard. Or on the play, I mean. This card killed like literally everything he played. I don't think he played a single creature with more than 2 toughness. So it can hopefully catch me back up from a bad like opening hand here. But I think I'm gonna lose this one. Oh my god, draw more land. I mean, I did need 2 blue eventually for this thing, but this is not a good hand. Alright, Yeti's fine. At least I have a play for next turn, and I can make him unblockable. I mean, as far as creatures to draw, that was a decent one. And it doesn't die to Frostfire, which a lot of my creatures do. So, I don't know, a lot. Some of my creatures die to it. Because I don't attack them. I don't want to trade off, but he does have lifelink. Maybe it dies to the land that I already have in play, but that's 2 turns away. I'll probably block. Can't be that greedy. I gotta try to kill him, I think. My hand's not like set up well for the long game. Don't have to worry about trying to decide. Let's go ahead and glimpse. Alright, Demon Bolt or Frostbite. Again, it doesn't have like anything. This is only 2 damage right now. I guess I take the Demon Bolt. I guess it just makes this thing unblockable and attack with it. So bad. Well, I don't need to kill the 3/1 anymore. This thing can kill it next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So definitely not blocking the 3/1 anymore. Probably shouldn't have even blocked it last turn. I can't get more. I can't get more greedy than this. I mean, I'm just going to use the land. Again, like his whole deck has 2 toughness. All right, those cards are both fine. I mean, I don't need this, but it lets me filter a land away, so it's. I guess I don't need it. Keep it. Oh, I mill anyway. I guess it didn't matter what I did there. Maybe I should have bottomed them. I can't think of any reason. I guess if I was decking in the very end, I would want this guy in the bottom. My deck, maybe I don't know. Can't imagine that it mattered that much there. What does he have? Who's in the cup? Do I save my creature with Run Ashore? I guess. I got nothing going on here. Whole lot of nothing going on over here. Just a bounce spell. I mean, it stops him from scrying. I don't know. This Yeti can win. It can be unblockable. Not saying it's gonna win. But these mountains in my hand weren't gonna win, that's for sure. So much foretell. What other foretells he played? He's played this could be the 3/2. Regain life, you play 2 spells in a turn. I didn't see a lot of other foretell from him. Oh, god damn it. I like a bolt from that. I'm fine. Well, I'm out of gas. I got a Yeti and 2 mountains. God damn it, how many of these things have I fucking killed? So many Vega the Watchers. Now that's a good foretell deck when you get 3 of those guys. Alright, alright. What can I get with that? I can get another Run Ashore. I can cast my Glimpse again. I'm still in business here. Let's see. Let's Go ahead and save. Can't remember what. Okay, so it's either run ashore or depart the realm. Guess I take run ashore just for more gas. Well, got both, I guess. Could bounce something, but I think I'll try to save it to bounce my own creatures. If I have to. I mean, like at instant speed. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to win on card advantage here. I'm just going to have to win on tempo. Yeah, it's hard to 1-for-1 against all these Vegas and Ravens. More foretell. Do I just bounce now and bounce on my turn? I guess. Doesn't matter. Just bounce everything. Bounce all the things. Bounce more things. Well, the Yeti's unblockable. No, he's gonna gain life. I can counter the Raven. He plays that. I didn't play that, fortunately. All right. I can squash if he tries to double block or something here. Working my way down here. Working my way through all these cards. I can counter the Raven. I mean, you have to kill the Yeti or he's dead. Okay, I guess that gets rid of the Yeti. Foretold the Raven. That's ballsy. Still counter it next turn, but he'll draw a card. I don't think I have any way to pump this thing. Is there any reason to keep it alive? Nah, no reason to keep it alive. No, did not need an island. He's gonna bolt it or something? What's going on? What is he looking at? My 1/1. Raise the Trogger. That's annoying. Wait, I thought that was his. What happened to his hawk? Confused. I guess I didn't know if he foretold it. That's why it was hidden from me. Well, looks like I'm back to losing here. All right, that's a good card. Don't have a lot of gas left in my deck. Got a Behold. So good attack here. So you attack with everything. Double block here. I can ping here. I can ping his face. Block you now, doesn't do anything. If I attack with just these two. If I attack with just this guy, I could ping one of these. It's not terrible. Basically, I'd kill all his ground stuff. And I'd lose my 5/4. I can counter his Raven when he plays it. Part the realm. Okay, can't do anything about that. Just see if I have enough mana to still cast Disdainful Stroke. I do not. Oh wait, I have the Harbinger. So I do. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll have enough. So I can still counter his Raven whenever he does play it. Anything left in my deck to draw? I got a Bergstrider, another Raven, Behold. That doesn't cut it. All right, do we have an attack here? Raven, this blocks this. This guy attacks. It's honestly not great. Like, do I have any combat tricks I could draw? I could draw the Bergstrider, and I have 2 Frostbites in my deck still. Just talk with Hoggy Mob, maybe. Can at least ping off one of these Koma's Faithfuls. Yep, that's fine. Who's milling? There's he is. Let's see what's left in my deck at this point. Berkshire's gone. Raven's gone. Wow, good aggro. Attacking for 7 here. It's fine. Got him. Oof, that was close. That was a close one. Definitely down to the wire there. Is that it for this deck, or did I have one more? One game remaining. Jesus. Alright. Let's play it out. No red mana, but I do have Glimpse. That's good enough. Probably find a red mana with that. Do I Glimpse or do I Foretell if I don't draw land? Ooh. Alright, I think I definitely want to find. Well. If I find my snow-covered mountain specifically, I can kill that with Frostbite. Just trying to determine if I want to use Raven form. I'll just use the Glimpse, I guess. Oh, nice, snow-covered mountain, perfect. Perfect, all three of my snow-covered basics. I guess I'll Foretell something. No, I'll save up Disdainful Stroke. He's gonna have 4 mana on his turn. Just gonna kill this thing now. I won't be able to. I mean, if he makes like a 4/4 land or something on his turn, I won't be able to do anything about it. All right, hold Disdainful Stroke. You need to draw some more land at some point, preferably next turn. Alright, not Disdainful Stroking this turn. Another Avalanche Caller, okay. Oh, I got another Frostbite for that, so. Where that came from. Where's your big drops? Tap land. So we need to play any of these spells. Still holding up Disdainful Stroke. Might kill that in a turn if it doesn't play anything, but we'll see. Maybe not though, it's just a 2/2. He's probably has me on. He's like, for sure I'm holding a counter. Okay, that's fine. Alright, I'll just bolt this thing then. Because I Foretell and hold up Disdainful Stroke again, or should I play a creature? I guess I have bounce. I don't need to hold up Disdainful Stroke when I have bounce in my hand. This lets me Glimpse again. I totally forgot about the Glimpse, but totally worth doing for this next turn. Yeah, I can just don't need to hold Disdainful Stroke with all this bounce. Definitely gonna stroke that at some point. Don't need to stroke it this turn, so I'm definitely gonna depart the round. So I'll have 4 mana. Let's see. I guess I could draw a tap land. Let's see how I want to do this. Yeah, I guess bounce it and then counter it when it comes back down. So I only have 2 blue. So I can't use Glimpse the Cosmos. So I'll just like Foretell the Raven form or something, I guess. No, I can't foretell anything. What am I saying? I'm gonna hold up Disdainful Stroke. He's like, oh wait, now I can counter again. He's gonna try to play around my counter. No. No, thank you. Don't need a 7/6 Trample. Alright, now let's glimpse. Berkshire is good. Alright, how can I lose from this point? Don't know. Just played a flyer to attack in there. I have Ravenform and Runshore and Bergstrider. At least I played a creature. He clearly does not have like a Wrath of God if he's killing my creatures with 1/1. Guy definitely has a lot of mana. I'm gonna say he flooded a little bit there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. Alright, well, I saw some snow, I saw some fatties, I saw some removal. Yeah, I don't have a sideboard, so it doesn't really matter. I still have not put this card in my deck. I mean, it's playable, but Shackles, I could steal his 7/6, attack him back with it. Do not think could counter target artifact or enchantment spell. So I can counter the Binding of the Old Gods. I'm gonna put it in if I only see one though. Maybe I see more of those. Put it in. Or sagas or something, I mean. No blue. Sand's much worse than the last one, so I gotta Morgan this. Yikes. It's a big yikes. One lander, but if I draw a land, I can basically play my whole hand. I guess I keep. Put back Depart the Realm. I didn't see. I guess I saw that one card that thing can kill. I got 2 draw steps to draw land here. Alright. We did it. I can't cast any red spells, but cast the rest of my hand. I really wish I had red now. I'd bolt that for sure. I guess this gets me a little more mana. So just play this guy. And it blocks, I mean, but he has double black. He played red, green, like every color. I guess I just foretell this guy and chillax. Doesn't have any snowlands yet. Nice. Do I have any snow? I have 2 snow. Is this snow? No, nothing else is snow in mine. Okay, so let's see. Play Raven, hold up Disdainful Stroke, I guess. What does he have foretold? Could bolt the Sculptor. Again, doesn't have any snowlands though. I'm gonna hold off on that. Definitely tagging with this guy. Let's just play this guy and hold up Disdainful Stroke again. Or I glimpse for a land. One of the two. Just play this guy and hold Disdainful Stroke. And bounce. I mean, hold up both of these, I mean. Alright, well, opponent is flooding out hard over here. Assume he's blocking with a 2-2. He doesn't have any snow land, so. Alright, there's my land. I could bolt that, but I was just trading. Got my value out of it. Just cast Glimpse here. Try to find some more action. It's not a lot of action, I would say. I think I'm gonna take the Snow Mountain. I guess this can scry 3 in the end. I like the Snow Mountain because I can bolt the Avalanche Caller, but okay. Guy's getting aggro. What is this card he's got foretold the whole game? Oh, it deal tap damage or something? Very nice, sure. Don't need to counter that. I guess I could have stopped the Scry 3. Just isn't quite impactful enough that I feel like I needed to counter it. Three bottom. Well, I guess I should have countered it so he would have drawn those 3 cards. Did I bounce that thing? Nah. Playing it slow and steady here. Could you have Wrath of God or something? I have counter for that, I guess. What is this foretell card? Not sure. Probably worth countering that. Since it's lethal on board next turn. Damn, stack went 3-0. Thought it was pretty bad. But Giants is just so good. So interactive, like just having interaction lets you you don't get those auto loss games like replaying other decks where you're just playing like ground creatures and stuff and then they just play like a flyer and a removal spell and you can't win. And like all this interaction, even Raven Form is interaction. Disdainful Stroke is interaction. Two double run ashores. I mean, it worked. I got a squash. creatures were so, I had so few creatures. Like, I do creature here. And we had like 11 creatures. One of which was, I had this freaking Harbinger, like every game, it's 1/3. But yeah, I mean, you can still, like all this interaction, you can still win games. Just play a few creatures, have some bounce, some removal, get a little bit lucky. GG. I guess I'll take a screenshot of this. Show up my pack someday. So many packs I'm drafting.